Hello everyone, let's have more news about the Lakers, but first don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. The idea of LeBron James leading the charge for this Los Angeles Lakers team for at least one more season undoubtedly has an exciting and promising ring to it. After all, the man has already won the franchise and NBA championship during his tenure and is coming off yet another impressive all-around campaign where he averaged 24.4 points, 8.2 assists, 7.8 rebounds, and 1.0 steals on 51.3% shooting from the floor and 37.6% shooting from deep while guiding the club to the third seed out west. However, coinciding with the positive spin of the King making his return for year number 23 is an undertone of slight pessimism, as his presence on the roster guarantees that Los Angeles will approach the upcoming offseason with an all in mentality for 2025-26. Though it may sound a bit strange to talk down on the idea of a team eyeing a title push, even with top-billed superstars like LeBron and Luka Doncic in the mix, this past postseason proved the Lakers are still rather far away from legitimately vying for the Larry O'Brien Trophy. On top of the fact that they were just shellacked by the Minnesota Timberwolves during their gentleman's sweep first-round exit, this aging Los Angeles squad will have to find a way to be better than the always menacing Warriors, the rising Houston Rockets, and the seemingly ready to take the leap San Antonio Spurs next season. And this is all before even mentioning the current Western Conference champs in the OKC Thunder. Now, considering Doncic is still only 26 years old and is expected to agree to terms on a new multi-year pact to remain in LA for the foreseeable future, one could realistically make the case that the Lakers are also a team that could consistently find themselves competing for ultimate glory moving forward. Now let's go to another video. Don't forget to leave a like.
In terms of spending power, they'll have the 5.7 million. Really, it's a little bit less than that $5.68 million taxpayer mid-level exception to go spend out there in free agency. Now, that is unless something drastic happens on the roster that we're not expecting. If again, not expecting this to happen, but if LeBron James were to take a significant pay cut on his next Lakers salary, we're talking like in the $16 to $20 million range, maybe that could open up the full mid-level exception, the 14.1 million. But again, not expecting that to happen. Dorian Finney-Smith also has a player option. Maybe he doesn't pick that up, and then he winds up walking away from the Lakers and leaving in free agency. That could open up a little bit more flexibility on the Lakers roster. My expectation, though, for Dorian Finney-Smith is that he will stay with the Lakers, either by picking up that $15 million player option or more likely by signing a new deal with the Lakers. Again, just know this is not set in stone, but most likely that $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception is what the Lakers will be working with as their primary method of signing free agents. Now, what do they need at the shooting guard position? Well, you need athleticism, you need defense. Those two things obviously important in a backcourt that projects to include Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic. You need somebody else who can really bring that burst, athleticism, defensive tenacity that Doncic and Austin Reeves simply don't have. On top of that, you're ideally going to want shooting out of your shooting guard. I know, revolutionary stuff right there. And secondary shot creation. Now, are you going to check all those boxes in one player? Probably not, especially one player that you're getting conceivably for the $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception. You're just probably not getting that guy with just that much money. But those are the qualities essentially that the Lakers will be looking for, and frankly most teams will be looking for in a shooting guard. So let's get to the list. Let's take a look. My buddy Keith Smith, who hosts the Front Office Show with me which you can find on YouTube as well, put together this handy dandy ranking of free agent shooting guards. Now, beginning with the starter tier. So these are, and by the way, there is no all-star tier. And I'm actually excited, by the way, about the shooting guard class this year. While there isn't an all-star level player out there, the Lakers aren't getting that guy anyway. And there is some decent depth here at the two. Now, Malik Beasley, former Laker, didn't shoot the ball particularly well as a Laker, at least when the games mattered. He tended to hit a lot of shots in garbage time, which kind of artificially inflated his percentages. But Malik Beasley, man, he would have been a great fit with the Lakers this season. He's the one who got away to a degree, but he's probably going to be getting that full mid-level. The Detroit Pistons are probably going to be the team that's going to give it to him. So $14.1 million, the Lakers probably not going to be able to get back into the Malik Beasley business, even though he would be a great shooter for the Lakers. Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent. I don't see him leaving the 76ers. $5.7 million, probably also not enough to get him, nor is it enough to make the Sixers blink and not match on him. So another guy the Lakers aren't getting. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Now, this is one that's actually, I think, fairly interesting because most likely he's going to get an MLE number, $14.1 million. He'll get something around that range. But As I said, there's not a lot of cap space out there this year. There's not a lot of spending power out there. There are a number of teams that may or may not have that 14.1 million available to them, depending on the moves they make and don't make and the choices that they make. There's a decent amount of teams that will have access to that, but a number of those teams are going to decide to hang on to their mid-level exception rather than spend it and wait until the regular season starts and they get to the trade deadline where they can use that 14.1 million as a trade exception. So not everybody that has the MLE will use it, and not every team that uses it is going to use it on a two-guard. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker, if the money dries up and a $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level is enough to get him, I think he should be the top of the Lakers list. Would make a lot of sense. Defensive guard, shoots it okay. And while the Wolves would like to bring him back, there's reason to question whether or not they actually can, because they already have to pay Naz Reid. They're going to have to pay Julius Randle. I think there's a decent chance Nickeil Alexander-Walker is legitimately available out there on the market. The other big question, would LeBron take less to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker? If that's what it comes down to, if he says, I will sign if you guys give me the 14 million, would LeBron say, yes, he will clear that bar and I'll take less in order to bring him onto the team? Not saying LeBron is even willing to do it, but last season he had certain players that he was willing to take less. I don't know if Nickeil Alexander-Walker clears that bar or not, but I think he would be a nice addition for the Lakers. This next one, I love it. Bruce Brown, he's a guy who the Lakers, I know, have had interest in the past. They thought they were going to get him. The year that they wound up signing Gabe Vincent, the Indiana Pacers snuck in and threw a big offer at Bruce Brown at the last minute. Otherwise, he probably would have already been a Laker. So there's already connections there between Bruce Brown and LA. I think he would make a lot of sense as a guard / wing. He can defend up. Is he the best shooter outside? No, but he is a pretty good defensive player, pretty versatile, can be that secondary creator for you. I think Bruce Brown would make a lot of sense, particularly with the lack of money that's out there on the market. Bruce Brown is a guy who I could see taking a little bit less than what his market value is, that $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level, signing with the Lakers, enjoying a year in the Lakers spotlight, and then trying to cash in next year in free agency. When we look at the free agent market overall, I think there's going to be a number of players that are in that boat. The Brooklyn Nets have cap space, but they're not trying to go all in to win right now. So these veteran guys like a Bruce Brown don't make sense for them. And I think the music's going to stop. The money's going to dry up, and these guys are going to be looking for a place to land. And the Lakers should be standing there with open arms saying, hey, take a little bit less and come play for us and enjoy the spotlight that LA brings. And you can try again in free agency next year. Now, the one thing, because I know a lot of Lakers fans will say, but doesn't that mean the Lakers are going to lose the player after a year? I mean, after all, we saw that happen with Malik Monk. We also saw that happen with Dennis Schroeder, where they played at below market value for the Lakers for a year, increased their trade value, and then left. And the Lakers were not able, at least in the case of Malik Monk, to offer enough money to keep the player. Well, the good news is, let's say the Lakers do get a player, whether it's Alexander Walker, whether it's Bruce Brown, anybody that says, I'm just going to take a one-year deal. The Lakers would not get bird rights on a one-year deal. It gets a little bit tricky if you are over the cap in order to retain that player. However, look at the Lakers' salaries right now for not this summer, but next summer. That cap sheet is pretty clean. Obviously, that can change drastically based on what they do or don't do this summer. But next year, the Lakers project to potentially be a cap space team. So there is more spending power coming in the future for the Lakers. So there is, I think, greater potential for the Lakers to bring somebody in on a one-year basis on a below market value deal. And if that player pops the way Malik Monk did, the Lakers may actually have enough spending power next summer to hang on to them rather than have to watch them walk away. So just something to consider when the Lakers are looking at these guys that are going to try to cash in, that are going to try to use the LA spotlight for 1 year and then cash in next season. All right, Cam Thomas. Hey, I love Cam Thomas, but he's a restricted free agent, and the Lakers aren't going to be able to offer enough for the Brooklyn Nets to blink. Keon Ellis, a restricted free agent. He's not going anywhere. Would love to get Keon Ellis on the Lakers. Boy, he would be a perfect fit, but most likely the Kings are either just going to pick up their team option or they'll decline the team option in order to work out a long-term deal with Keon Ellis. He'd be a great defensive fit with the Lakers. Would love to see him on the team, but it's not in the cards. Karis LeVert, is an interesting one. A solid bench scorer. Does he really do the things the Lakers need him to do? I do like the size that he offers. His playmaking maybe isn't as important. I think the most important things for these players that we're talking about that are going to be in an Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic backcourt, it's the shooting and the defense first and foremost, with playmaking being kind of a distant fourth on the list, with athleticism being in the mix too. So Karis LeVert, I don't know that he's the best fit for the Lakers, but again, you could do worse than Karis LeVert on a taxpayer bin level. Wouldn't hate seeing that. Duncan Robinson, if you need shooting, obviously he can shoot the ball. The athleticism, the defensive concerns, though, are there. But if, as Keith notes, he's getting the non-taxpayer MLE, that's that $14.1 million. If he's getting a chunk of that above the $5.7 million the Lakers offer, so some team offers, I don't know, $9 million a season, that's going to price him out. Even if he becomes a free agent at all, he may not. He may end up just picking up his option for next year. Gary Trent Jr. Look, this is a guy who's been connected to the Lakers for years. For as long as I can remember, Gary Trent Jr. has been connected to the Los Angeles Lakers. And yet somehow he's still just 26 years old. But so still very young, fits with Luka's timeline. And if you can't get a Bruce Brown, you can't get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, one of those better defensive players, Gary Trent Jr. would make a lot of sense. No, he's not a great defensive player, but he's above average. He's not going to be on the same level as some of the other guys we've talked about, but he can really shoot the ball. He made some big mistakes last year for the Bucks, especially in their final playoff game. The ball went right through his hands, but nonetheless, he's a talented player. I think would make some sense in the Lakers backcourt. I would like to see him be a little bit better defensively, but nonetheless, you can't be too upset if the Lakers were able to land him. Especially if, as Keith notes here, these guys are starting to become veteran minimum players now, which is what we saw him land with in Milwaukee. If the Lakers could pick him up on a minimum deal, you'd have to be thrilled, because that would mean you could get Gary Trent Jr. and then use your taxpayer mid-level exception on another player, that $5.7 million. It could be another guard, or more likely, we would see the Lakers use that money on a big, like a Clint Capella, a Brook Lopez, Steven Adams, some of the other players that are out there on the market. So I do like the idea of targeting Gary Trent Jr., especially if Keith's prediction of a veteran minimum deal is really possible. Now, the rest of these guys that we're going to look at, these are going to be, especially in the case of, say, Luke Kennard, a definite veteran minimum guy. That said, not a good defensive player, but Luke Kennard has a history of shooting fairly well against the Los Angeles Lakers. And for a team that needs shooting, yeah, you could do far worse than Luke Kennard. That said, the Lakers already have Dalton Knecht on their roster. Now, maybe they won't after the summer trade season. I think more likely than not, Dalton Knecht winds up being used in a trade package. But if they don't, I don't think it makes any sense to target Luke Kennard, because you already have a player who I think is better in Dalton Knecht. Tim Hardaway Jr., streaky scorer, has spent time in Dallas with Luka, so there is some synergy there. And the rumor is that he's the third guy on the list for the Detroit Pistons to bring back, and therefore the least likely for them to bring back. They're going to prioritize Malik Beasley and Dennis Schroeder ahead of Tim Hardaway Jr. So he may indeed be available, especially if there's any way that the money really dries up and you're talking veteran minimum. Would love to see Tim Hardaway Jr. on the Lakers to provide that scoring burst, especially for a Lakers team that really needed bench scoring. If you wind up having to package Dalton Knecht in a deal somewhere else in order to maybe get your starting center or something like that, Tim Hardaway Jr. as an off-the-bench scorer, I think could be a really solid addition to this Lakers team. But again, only if the price is right. Dante Exum is a player that I like a lot as a two-way guard, especially a defensive player, has experience once again playing with Luka. There's already rumors, though, connecting him to the Dallas Mavericks that he's just going to wind up staying there. But if they could get him on a minimum contract, can handle the ball a little bit, can be a secondary creator, I think he's a guy who could make a lot of sense for the Lakers. I wouldn't rank him ahead of some of these other players, Bruce Brown, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, players like that. And there's another guy on the list that I would also put ahead of Dante Exum, but you could do a lot worse than him. I would rather have Dante Exum, for example, than Luke Kennard for this Lakers team, simply because I think his defensive abilities far outweigh what say Kennard could do. AJ Mitchell, the Thunder have actually played a little bit in game one of the NBA Finals. I don't think they'll let him go. Restricted free agent. Eric Gordon, 37 years old. I don't think he makes a lot of sense for the Lakers. He can still score the basketball, but I think he will either retire or he'll just stay in Philadelphia. with the 76ers. Gary Harris has a team option. I think the Magic probably pick up that team option and then try to use him in a trade package. If they don't, as Keith notes, the Magic roster is starting to get full. So if they do wind up declining that option, and Keith has him as likely to decline that option. Personally, I think they try to package him into trade first. But if they do decline that option, yeah, he's a guy that could give you a little bit of versatility in the backcourt. Is he the long-term answer for you? No. And a lot of these guys, aside from, say, Alexander Walker and a few of the others, are probably not the long-term answers. But again, so Gary Harris could be an intriguing guy. But here's the one. This is my guy. This is my guy. If the Lakers could find any way to get him for, as Keith notes, a veteran minimum prove-it type deal, DeAnthony Melton, yes, please. Former USC player. I was hoping the Lakers would draft him in the year that he came out, coming off of a torn ACL, but he looked really good for the Golden State Warriors before he suffered the injury. He's a versatile guard, can shoot, can defend at a high level, good combo guard. I think he would be, if healthy, again, big if, but if healthy, I think he would be a phenomenal get for the Lakers. And he is the guy, everybody, that I'm thinking about when I talk about a player the Lakers could sign now on a one-year deal, and then if they have more financial flexibility next summer, he could command a bigger contract, and the Lakers could be in position to retain him. I think DeAnthony Melton would be a wonderful fit for the Lakers, and he is near the very top of my list. In fact, scratch that. He is the top of my list if it's a veteran minimum deal. I think I would slot him even if the Lakers are confident in his health. I think I would slot him even ahead of Gary Trent Jr. right now. That's how much I believe in DeAnthony Melton. Gary Payton II, good defensive guard. He's really the prototype for what we're hoping that eventually Bronny James will become. So I do like him. Brings energy and defense, certainly. Jordan Goodwin kind of does similar things as well, though Payton is certainly the more experienced player. I would imagine he winds up sticking with the Warriors, but wouldn't be a bad fit for the Lakers as a tenacious defensive guard in the backcourt. Sam Merrill, a shooter the Lakers could certainly target. Again, I would prefer to find somebody that has some defensive chops, and that's not really Sam Merrill, but certainly a shooter if they do decide that they're trying to find somebody for the minimum that can just shoot. Kevin Porter Jr. does have a player option with the Milwaukee Bucks. I wonder if he winds up picking that up or at least staying with the Bucks if he declines it. But I don't know if the Lakers want to gamble on a player like him or if they want more of a proven commodity. Alec Burks, Pat Connaughton, I think those guys are kind of aging out at this point. The Bucks, look, he's going to pick, by the way, Pat Connaughton, let's be real, he's picking up his player option. It's like $9 million. He's going to pick that up. He won't actually be a free agent. Delano Banton, the shooting just isn't really there. And then we're getting into some guys that are more, question marks with team options that these guys probably wind up keeping. So Brandon Boston probably winds up staying with the Pelicans. As Keith notes, Keon Johnson did some things this year for the Nets. He probably winds up staying there. And this is where we start getting into kind of the pick and start getting slim. Landry Shamet can shoot. Garrison Matthews can shoot. But are either of these guys good enough defensively? Probably not. There's our old friend Lonnie Walker, a mid-level exception signing, a taxpayer mid-level exception signing from back in the day that never wound up sticking with the Los Angeles Lakers. Spent some time in Europe last year. Also came back, though, with the Philadelphia 76ers. But again, he's a depth piece, and I don't know how well he fits. As much as I like Lonnie Walker, and I'm fond of the Lonnie Walker game 4 from a few years back, I don't know that he really fits with Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic in that backcourt. But nonetheless, some really interesting players here. Again, DeAnthony Melton. I love DeAnthony Melton. Think he'd be a great fit for the Los Angeles Lakers. But there's other guys, too, even if they don't get him. Gary Payton II could fit. Gary Harris could fit. Dante Exum. Tim Hardaway Jr. If you need some bench scoring, that would be interesting. Luke Kennard shooting. Again, Gary Trent Jr. Karis LeVert, maybe he's got size. Maybe there's something there. And then, again, Bruce Brown, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, both of these guys, I think, would be great gets for the Lakers.
The Lakers to pull off a trade, right? Lakers have several needs, from wing depth, point of attack, defense, to 3 and D guys, to obviously the center position. And kind of went over various players. Instead of going after, the Jeremy Grants or the DeAndre Aytons or things like that of the world that have been linked to the Lakers in the past, my thought was like, go get a Thibault and, a Reith and, Kamara and those kind of, can you put together a 3 or 4 player package, right, to maybe do that. But saw a lot of people in the comments of that video talk about going and getting DeAndre Ayton, that Ayton is the answer, right? Blazers Edge recently put out an article diving into the Lakers and Blazers and that the Blazers should look to trade Ayton to the Lakers. Now, DeAndre Ayton is on an expiring contract, right? So it would probably be in Portland's best interest to make a move. They have an abundance of centers. Donovan Clegan kind of emerged for them, right? He's supposed to be the future for that team, for that organization. There are some conditioning issues with him, but outside of that, you know, the goal is to eventually transition him into the starting unit. They got Robert Williams, they got Reed, right? Like they have 4 or 5 centers, not counting this upcoming draft. What do they do in this draft? To where they need to start making some moves at some point. And Ayton could be a target for the Lakers, as well as Portland could look to, hey, let's trade Ayton to the Lakers. Because one, how many teams need a starting caliber center, right? Most teams either already have their guy, are about to draft their guy, or have the guy that they think may potentially be their guy that they're growing and developing, right? DeAndre Ayton is 26 years old, so there's still plenty of room for growth and upside and potential. And in all honesty, right, and I've talked, I think the Lakers should stay away from Ayton. My real issue is, one, he's one of those players that just can't get out of his own way, right? I believe there is a version of DeAndre Ayton that we look at and go, he's one of the best centers in basketball, right? Talk about a guy that can essentially do everything out there on the basketball court, right? Pick and pop, pick and roll. You can dump the ball down to him. He can go to work around the rim. He's not reliant, right, on like a Luka or something like that. And he's still young enough to where you could have him and a Luka for the next, 8 years or whatever, right? So I do think that there are kind of these pros and untapped potential of Ayton and whatnot, but he's making 35, almost 36 million this upcoming season. Again, he'll be an unrestricted free agent. So there is the argument of like, if it works, great, you can sign him to a new long-term deal. If it doesn't work, you can kind of just let him walk and clear up 35, almost 36 million in cap space, right? Maybe go make some moves. Problem is, what do you have to give up? If you have to give up Connect and a first and all this stuff to go get Ayton, if it doesn't work, are you really just letting them walk and losing all those assets, right? Now you're forced to pay and stuck with a guy that didn't really work out, right? So there's risk reward either way. Now, again, there is an argument to be made of like, if the Lakers can get him focused and right and get him out of his own way, which, in all honesty, he might just need that. He might just need structure, right? He might just need, you see guys all the time that are really good, really talented, and they're in one place and then end up going to another place, and that place they figure it out, right? Like, or they emerge and evolve into that guy. And you got to think, the Lakers, they have the structure. They have guys like LeBron James, who's gonna, that would yield the respect from Ayton, right? You have guys in JJ Redick that's not gonna play around, that knows like, hey, I'm gonna be here whether you're here or not, buddy, right? So like, we're not playing these games, right? You need to focus. You need to be locked in. You need to do those things, right? You want to talk about having the easiest time of his career, right? He would have the easiest time of his career. He'd be playing alongside LeBron, Luka, right? And likely Austin Reeves, because I don't think that they'll trade Austin Reeves for DeAndre Ayton. So you're talking about 3 guys that could set him up and get him right? And he would just have the easiest time at worst, right? Or I guess at best, I've talked about this, right? He'd be your 4th option on the Lakers, right? But any given night, he could be your 2nd option. On any given night, he could be your 3rd option, right? Like, he's good enough to yield, right? I mean, he's already double-double guy. He's like, last season, he was 15 and 10, right? We've seen seasons where he's, 18 and 12. And I think he's like a legit 20 and 10 center. Again, if he can get out of his own way, that's the problem. Right? He kind of gets in his own mental at times. You saw the antics more. So he's actually been, to his credit, right? He's actually been much better with Portland, kind of buying in with Portland. And you haven't heard all the noise that you heard with Phoenix, right? Phoenix, it was like he was throwing tantrums. He didn't want to like check in. He just sat on the bench, right? Him and Monty were getting in arguments, him and Player, right? Like there was all this noise, whether it was true or not, whatever the deal was going on behind the scenes. At the end of the day, there were things that kind of painted him in a negative light, right? And it was just like, dude, this guy has all the talent in the world. If he could just
The Los Angeles Lakers robbed the Dallas Mavericks clean in the Luka Doncic trade in February, getting a 25-year-old megastar in his prime for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and one future first-round pick in 2029. Regardless of what someone thinks about Doncic, that is poor asset management, the trade did put the Lakers in a tough position because they sent away their only good center in Davis, and he didn't want to play center anymore. That forced them to play guys like Dorian Finney-Smith and Rui Hachimura at center in the playoffs, something other teams were able to exploit. Dallas also faces a dilemma as they'll have a loaded front court with Davis, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively II, Dwight Powell, PJ Washington, Najee Marshall, Olivier Maxence Prosper, Cooper Flagg, and more as guys who can play at either forward spot or at center. That could force them to trade one this offseason as they look for guard help, but it's unlikely the Lakers are a trade partner again. Gafford and Doncic quickly built chemistry in their time together in Dallas, and the two of them would seemingly like to play together again in the future. However, Jovan Buha, who covers the Lakers for The Athletic, reported that it would take a lot for a trade to happen here. They probably have to overpay, Buha said on his show, the Buha's Block. It would probably have to be something like Gabe, Vincent, Dalton, Necht, and a first round pick for Gafford, and that's a lot. The Lakers already tried to trade Dalton Knecht away from Mark Williams at the trade deadline, but that trade was rescinded for medical concerns with Williams. Gafford also only has 1 year left on his contract, so the Lakers could try to wait him out and sign him in the 2026 offseason. And you, fan, what do you think about Daniel Gafford's situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.